Hi, welcome back to my story time with Nana. I have a whole new story for you today. You're going to like this one. It's pretty exciting, pretty interesting. It would be really cool. I can't wait. Let's begin. James gets a job. It had rained all day, and when it was time for James to go to bed, it was still raining. Daddy said the rain was good for the crops, but it sure wasn't good for a little boy wanting to play outside. James drifted off to sleep, hoping the rain would stop in the morning. Sometime in the middle of the night, James heard a loud crashing sound. It wasn't thunder. It sounded like a tree falling. A big tree. James ran into his parents' room. "Daddy, Daddy," he whispered, not wanting to wake up his mother. "Daddy, I heard a loud noise." "I know. I heard it too. Go back to bed, son. It was probably just a tree," his father told him. "We'll check it out in the morning." James walked back to his bedroom and climbed back into bed and lay there, listening, listening for more crashing noises. All he heard were the raindrops tapping on his bedroom window. He finally fell asleep. In the morning, he woke to the sun shining through his bedroom window and the sound of Lucy mooing from the back pasture. James jumped out of bed, happy to see the sun. He couldn't wait to play outside. He dressed and went to the kitchen. His mommy was making breakfast. Pancakes, his favorite. "Good morning, James," Mommy said when he sat at the table. "Did I hear you come in our room last night?" "Yes, I tried to be quiet," James told her. "I heard a loud noise." "Oh, I heard it too. Daddy is out at the old barn. Seems like that's where the noise came from last night," Mommy told him. "Why don't you run down there and let him know that breakfast is almost ready?" "Okay." James put on his mud boots and ran down to the old barn in the side pasture. As he got closer, he noticed that the barn looked different. The lean-to was caved in. Daddy was standing there surveying the barn. "Daddy, what happened to the barn?" "Good morning, son. Well, it looks like the storm yesterday got the better of the lean-to of this old barn." "What are we going to do? Do you have to take the whole barn down?" James asked. "Where will Mommy milk Lucy?" "Well, that's a lot of questions first thing in the morning," Daddy said. "How about we have some breakfast and figure out what we're going to do?" "Oh, yeah, Mommy said to tell you that breakfast was almost ready." "Wait, did you say we?" "Yes, we. I'm not going to be able to fix this all by myself," Daddy told him. "You want me to help?" "I'm going to give you a job." "A job? Like a real job?" James asked. "Yes, son. You're going to be an apprentice carpenter. Now let's go get some breakfast. I have a feeling we're going to need all our strength today." James and his father walked back to the house together. During breakfast, James told his mother that Daddy was going to give him a job rebuilding the lean-to on the old barn. He was an apprentice carpenter now, and he was very excited. "Honey, do you think James is old enough to work on the barn?" she asked. "Well, he's got to learn sometime, and we need that lean-to fixed." "I can do it, Mommy. I'm strong like Daddy." "Well, I can't argue with that. You just be careful," she said. After breakfast, James and Daddy went to the local lumber store and bought the wood and hardware for the new lean-to they would be building. Daddy bought James some work gloves that fit, well, like a glove. a pair of safety goggles, a hard hat, and his very own carpenter belt. The belt had loops and pouches all around it, and James couldn't wait to feel each loop and pouch. Now, I know this belt is a little too big for you right now, but it's a good one, and it'll last you a good long time. I have a feeling you're going to need it, Daddy said, wrapping the belt around James' waist twice. They drove back to the farm, James sitting in the passenger seat of their pickup truck. He smiled. He was going to help Daddy build a lean-to for the barn. He was an apprentice carpenter. "Okay, son, we have a lot of work ahead of us today," Daddy said when they pulled into their driveway. "First, we have to clean up the damaged area and get it ready for our project." Daddy pulled the truck up to the barn. "May as well leave this here, close to our work area." They walked to the tool shed and Daddy collected all the tools he would need for the demolition of the old lean-to. He had a handsaw, an axe, a hammer for him, and he slipped a small hammer into James' tool belt. "Is that all I need?" James asked disappointedly. "No, but it's all you'll need for today. Today is mostly grunt work." "What does that mean?" "Well, today we're going to be getting rid of the debris from the old lean-to and setting the post for the new lean-to. We're going to need that wheelbarrow. Think you can push it back to the barn?" Daddy put the power saw, chainsaw, and extension cord into the wheelbarrow, and James did a fine job of pushing the wheelbarrow back to the barn. Once at the barn, Daddy gave James his hard hat, gloves, and goggles. "These stay on at all times when we're in this work area," he told James. Father and son began the task of cleaning up the destroyed old lean-to. James collected the small debris and Daddy dragging the larger pieces to the junk pile behind the barn. "Hey, my workmen!" Mommy called out. She was coming from the house with a picnic basket. "Do you think you can take a break and have some lunch?" "I'll say we could use some lunch," Daddy answered. "How about it, James? You ready for a break?" "Yes, sir," James answered. "Being an apprentice carpenter sure works up an appetite." "Thanks, honey," Daddy said, giving Mommy a kiss on the cheek. "You're welcome. I mean, it's the least I can do for the men fixing my lean-to. Lucy is going to be so happy with her new milking area," Mommy answered. "Well, I'm going to leave you men to your lunch. Enjoy." Daddy set up a work area with cinder blocks and 2 wooden planks, making a small bench. "Let's see what we have for lunch," he said, patting the bench for James to have a seat, and opened up the basket. "Oh boy, are we 2 lucky workmen. Chicken salad sandwiches, slices of red peppers, carrots, and celery, and whoa, what is this? Spinach dip for that. Oh, and some grapes, 2 mason jars of fresh milk, and a couple of bottles of water. Wow, we sure are lucky, huh, Daddy?" "You betcha." Daddy and James sat in the shade of the barn and ate their lunch together. "Thanks, Daddy," James said, looking up at his father. "For what, son?" "For giving me this job. This is the best day ever." "Well, I needed the best apprentice, and that's why I hired you," he said, ruffling his hair. "Eat up, son. We have a lot of work ahead of us." Soon they were back to work. They had broken down the old lean-to and moved all the debris, and now it was time to rebuild. Daddy dug holes for the new post, and James helped him mix up the cement. And then Daddy shored the post up and made sure they were level. James held the level on the post till the bubble was right in the middle. "Right there, Daddy, right there. That's perfect," he would say every time. Daddy showed James how to read the tape measure so all the wood was cut into the correct length. James put the tape measure in one of his tool belt pouches. He let James put the pencil mark on the wood, and Daddy cut the wood almost all the way through, and then let James finish the cut. I mean, he was an apprentice after all. The sun was just starting to set when Mommy called out for Daddy and James to come in for dinner. But Daddy, we're not done yet. I know, son. We've been going at it all day. Time for some rest. Besides, we need to let our post set overnight. Let the cement do its job. Anyhow, I heard your mother say she was making spaghetti and meatballs tonight for dinner. And fresh bread? James asked. He didn't even wait for an answer. What are we waiting for? Let's go, Daddy. Mommy did make spaghetti and meatballs, and boy, was it yummy. Good night, son, Daddy said, kissing James' forehead that night, tucking him in. You get some sleep. We have a lot to get done tomorrow. James fell asleep instantly. Nothing like a little hard work to make a boy tired, especially when that boy was an apprentice carpenter. The next morning after breakfast, Daddy and James headed over to the barn and began putting everything together. Daddy filled James' pouch on his tool belt with nails. Okay, son, I have this pouch here tied to a string, and when I start running out of nails, I'll drop it down to you and you fill it up with the nails from your belt. Daddy got up on the ladder and began attaching the brackets to hold the beams. James had to fill the pouch twice for Daddy. Then they lifted the beams onto the brackets. It was really starting to look like a lean-to now. James helped Daddy get the plywood onto the beams, and by lunchtime, they had a lean-to. It needed shingles and some paint, but it sure looked good to James. Daddy and James sat on the back of the truck's tailgate with a picnic basket packed by Mommy in between them. Mommy had made fried bologna sandwiches, chocolate chip cookies, and fresh ice-cold milk. Well, James, you did a great job, Daddy said. I think you're the finest apprentice carpenter I've ever hired. Thanks, Daddy, for giving me the job. I can't wait till our next job. James took a big bite out of his sandwich. He felt so happy to have worked to build the lean-to, happy to have been a big help to his daddy, happy to have had a job as his daddy's apprentice carpenter. The end. I'll tell you, it makes me wonder what would be their next job. Well, you think about that. I can't wait till next week. We have another story, another child, another job. Don't forget to share my stories, and I'll see you next week. Thank you. Mwah.